Hello and welcome to this interview in the series Remembering Skiing, where we talk to ski pioneers of the Laurentian Quebec region and people who have seen the evolution of skiing from the early days to what it is today in the Laurentians, and particularly in the MRC des Pays d'en Haut, which is known as the birthplace of skiing in Quebec and Canada. Want to stretch it maybe for North America as well. It's a bit of a stretch, but it really started here. Our guest today is a very important person who has a very broad resume, Linda Crutchfield, whom we probably know more as a champion alpine skier, Olympian, but was also very strong in water skiing, ski jumping.
Not ski jumping.
Okay.
Water skiing had jumping, slalom, and tricks.
Okay.
But
you were...
I wasn't in snow ski jumping.
No.
I was in downhill giant slalom and slalom in alpine skiing.
And then you had, of course, luge, which was a lot of sports were on snow. How did you? You're obviously a natural athlete. How did you get into all these sports? Was skiing, alpine skiing, your first involvement?
Yes. I was racing against my brother and his friends in Shawinigan area because there were no other women that raced. And so my first race at Tremblant was...
So what years we're talking about here?
Would be talking about 1958, 59.
Okay.
And my first race, as I said, was at Tremblant. But I was reading the Gazette and I saw that the entrances were being taken for the Taschereau race. So I asked my parents if I could go up. My father was a dentist and he was working, so he couldn't take me up, and my mother couldn't either, so I ended up going up on the bus. My dad called Ernie McCullough. Since Ernie was from the Rivers, they knew each other, and he said, "Would you mind looking after my daughter?" And Ernie said, "No problem." So I got up on the bus and I got my skis out of the baggage rack, and they were a pair of 180 Northland skis with only a couple of steel edges missing. And he says, "Okay, so where are your downhill skis?" I said, "What you see is what I have."
Yeah.
So he took me to the ski shop and he loaned me a pair of head skis that were slaloms, but 210 centimeters. And that's quite a bit different from 180. All I knew is that it was like way high. Anyway, I used those for the downhill, and I won the downhill.
That was in 1958, you say?
That was in 59.
59.
Mm-hmm.
And I see from the notes here that you were on the national ski team as of 1959.
Yes.
So that was
after a couple
quite a rapid rise.
Right.
So you basically had 2 participation in the Olympics and 1 alternate. Which Olympics were those?
Well, the Squaw Valley, I was the alternate. In '64 in Innsbruck, I was on the team in all sports, all events, I should say. And then in '68, that's when I switched to luge.
Okay. Well, before we go to the luge, let's talk about the skiing career. You just mentioned that you were in all events. Things have changed dramatically since then. When you were on the team, you had to be polyvalent. You had to be able to ski downhill, slalom, giant slalom,
right,
and combined, I guess, some of that. Well,
right.
But nowadays, skiers are very specialized. They're either speed skiers or they're technical skiers, which means giant slalom and slalom.
Right.
So. How was it then to be?
Plus, they added a new event, which is the Super G. They didn't have Super G when I was competing.
Thank God. Because I'm sure you had your hands full with downhill, giant slalom, and slalom. Because
I would have been on the speed team for sure, because I love the downhill.
And of course, the expectations nowadays are so much greater. people, you know, with the amount of money, the amount of time that's spent on athletes, it's the expectations are very high.
Exactly.
And the disappointments can be very high as well. So it's quite a different thing. I'd like just to finish briefly with some of your other activities, like you were big in water skiing. Tell us a little bit about that part of your sporting career.
Well, it seems that every sport that I did had some connection with serendipity. You know, it was just sort of meant to be, and things sort of fell into place. And water skiing, it was my husband, who was a member of the Crutchfield water ski group in Saint Agathe, and I went up there as a guest of the Crutchies, along with Jean-Guy Brunet and a couple other members on the national ski team, and we just did a little ski past. And
At La Ronde?
No, this was at Saint Agathe.
Saint Agathe, okay.
Yeah, and so anyway, long story short, my husband and I got married that year, and in '67 we did Expo '67. We did a show there. But before that, I went to the World Championships in '65 in Australia, and in '67 I didn't do the World Championships in Sherbrooke because I was in the show. But I did it in '69 in Denmark, and '71 in Spain, and '73 in Bogota, Colombia. So I got around the world quite a bit for the water skiing. It was really a lot of fun.
And then you had luge.
Yeah.
And luge was another thing.
That also was like a serendipity thing. I was at a villa, and I was working on the ski school at the end of the day, and Vic Emery walks into the building, and he was covered in ice. I said, "Where have you been?" He says,
Now Vic, just to put things in context, won an Olympic gold medal in 1964 for bobsled, 4-man bobsled.
Yeah.
And he was also won the World Championships, I guess,
yeah.
Go on.
And that's sort of where I met him in '64, and winning the gold medal. I saw that, actually. But and a little anecdote there too. My mother and I were on the bobsled track waiting for the Vic Emery to come down with his 4-man team, and they would make a lot of noise when they were coming down. So when we're in between runners, I looked over the other side where the luge track was, and I could hear like this,
no
and
noise.
The luge was going down. So I looked down and I said to my mother, "Can you look at this? Can you imagine anything so silly going down on your back feet first?" And 4 years later, I was one of those silly people. It was really a lot of fun.
And when you were inducted, was it at the Chalet Pauline Vanny or at Mont-Gabriel?
At Mont-Gabriel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any recollection of how that went, and with you, and your friends were there and all that stuff? Was it an exciting moment?
Actually, with me, I didn't have anybody except my parents there, because I didn't know how it worked. You know, I'm coming from Shawinigan, and I didn't know whether it was just a very small, intimate thing or what. And I realized that when I got there that there were over 100 people there. But you know, nobody said to me, "Can you get your friends and to come?" You know. Mm-hmm. When I was inducted in '84, the board of directors at the time needed some more people to be on the selection committee for the Hall of Fame. So they invited me to Mohabitant, where they were having their meetings at the time, in the little ski patrol shack. And they asked me to be on the board, and I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm quite busy with." "All you have to do is just name a few people every year, and that's all you have to do. You know, we'll do all the rest." Well, famous last words.
Famous last word. You gave up your day job, and now you're here and you're poor, like I am. Well, it was, it's quite a dedication, I guess, once you get involved with the Ski Hall of Fame. Tell us a little bit about the selection process and how it goes?
Well, and it's sort of changed a little bit over the years, but now what we do is to have people submit something on paper on the person that they want to induct, and we have sort of a coach that follows that person to invite people to support them at the supper. And we have the supper.
And the selection committee, first of all.
The selection committee, yeah, that also has varied a little bit, but roughly 4 or 5 people that get together, and we review all of the selections, and we decide who is going to be for that year, and we try to make it as diverse as possible, having all sports represented, alpine skiing, cross-country skiing, freestyle, and then we try also to have it English, French. There are a lot of different categories that, we can't have a representation of all the categories every year because that would be too many. So we try to keep it between 4 and 6 candidates each year.
Of course, people sometimes, when you talk about skiing, the first thing that comes to mind is alpine skiing. But the Laurentian Ski Museum in the Hall of Fame is much more than that. I mean, it's cross-country, it's alpine, as you say, it's freestyle, it's snowboard, it's telemark, every discipline of the sport of skiing, other than tubing.
Yeah. The thing that's important is that the candidate has to have been exceptional in whatever sport they were doing, either on a national or an international basis, preferably international. There are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame that have not had international experience because they may have been earlier pioneers and just there wasn't that type of opportunity, if you like, in the earlier days. But a lot of people in the Hall of Fame were representing different clubs and they worked very hard in organizing the races for people who are also in the Hall of Fame now.
So there are people like you who are racers, but there are also people who are behind you,
right.
who without them, you may have not been there, or other people may have not been there.
Right.
I think of people who are like the La Framboise
exactly.
at Mont Gabriel, who really helped to organize the freestyle skiing at Mont Gabriel, and were behind people like Jean-Luc Brassard and others that trained there. They did a great job, and they merit being there. And there are also other types of builders, people who did exceptional things, running ski areas or ski businesses and so on. So it's quite a diversified category of people, all of whom contributed to making this region what it is, and of course deserve to be recognized in the Hall of Fame.
In some of those clubs that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, there were also traveling ski clubs. And as some of those people, like you mentioned, are sort of behind the scenes. They're organizing their groups to come up to different areas, so they help the ski areas, they help themselves because they're making money off of it. And the kids get a terrific exposure to skiing. When they go to a certain area, they also have instructors that coach them, teach them as they're going through their ski day, so they're supervised all the time. So it's good.
Now let's talk about the Laurentian Ski Museum. The Laurentian Ski Museum has been in existence for a long time, but at one point in the late 90s, it was almost gone. It was just about to disappear because of lack of interest and lack of leadership, basically. And you and Bob Shelso decided that no, this was not going to happen. So you put together a meeting of passionate skiers in Piedmont somewhere. And tell us about how this came about, to the relaunch of the Ski Museum.
Well, one by one, the members of the board of directors of the museum either quit or died, or they just dropped out of the picture. And so we just decided, with all of the really neat artifacts that we had and the connections that we had, and the Hall of Fame had already started. So we didn't want to see it all just die. And so that's why we invited a whole bunch of people to this place in Piedmont. And we developed a new council.
That was in 2000.
In 2000, right? And then we had no place to go. So we still changed places a little bit here and there. And then we went to Biggie's restaurant. We were with them for a few years. The owner had said, come, I want to decorate my restaurant, and we'll use all of the things that you have for the Hall of Fame to decorate the restaurant. So,
which was a good idea.
Which was great.
Those are the days when you were president at that point.
That's right.
And you kind of got that contact organized.
That's right. Yeah. So that worked really well until the owner of the restaurant decided that he couldn't do it anymore because business wasn't that good. And so we had to pull out of there.
Back into boxes.
Back into boxes, right. And then that's when we made arrangements to come here, actually. Mm-hmm. So, and that was largely through Pierre Urquhart.
So tell us about the new museum. There's quite a bit. This is a real museum. This is not biggies with decorated with skis and stuff like that. This is a real McCoy museum.
Yeah. It was the thing that was difficult about biggies was that when people were walking along in the restaurant, there would be tables, and then there'd be something hanging on the wall. So people would sort of lean over the tables to read what was on the wall, and the people were eating were like, what's going on here? So that was a little bit awkward. But in quiet times, it was okay. It worked well. But coming in here, it's quite a bit different because it's like home, you know. And besides, we have Nancy, who is so fantastic, looking after everything.
One more last thing. You're still involved quite a bit in alpine skiing. You are teaching skiing now at Mont Tremblant.
Yes.
And, you have been for several years.
20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that keeps you busy in the sport of skiing, the sport that you love and that you practiced all your life.
Yes.
And it continues.
The only thing that changed is that I'm doing it part-time. At first I was selling real estate, and so I was doing that part-time with the teaching. But now I'm not doing real estate anymore. I've retired from that. But I'm actually looking to retiring altogether eventually. And so I still do it part-time at Jean Blanc.
Well, you're too young to retire. Look at you. You know, it's the cold that keeps you fresh looking and not looking your age at all. So thank you for...
You're very kind.
Thank you very much for doing that. Our guest today was Linda Crutchfield, natural-born athlete and a great alpine skier, and also responsible for the rebirth of the Laurentian Ski Museum, which is here at 30 Rue Filion, just behind the church in Saint-Sauveur. Thank you for being our guest, and
thank you.
Have a good winter.